The internet is full of talk about how AI is transforming education. Much of this talk is full of promise, but very low on practical details about how to do this safely and effectively. This film looks at how teachers can use AI to plan and prepare for their lessons. It also looks at whether students can use AI in their own studies and the adaptations teachers need to make to welcome AI into their classrooms. The presentation introduces ideas that are developed much further in a series of 10 short blog posts on my website, neilingram.co.uk. Just look for Teaching and Learning with AI. Stay with the series until the end because a lot of the practical advice is given in parts 7 to 10. So we're thinking about two big ideas. How would our lessons change to allow AI to work in our classrooms? And whether we think it's worth the investment in adapting our classroom practices. Some of these ideas are developed from research I did about 10 years ago with the Hewlett-Packard Catalyst Initiative under the title of Pedagogy 3.0. The challenge was to imagine what teaching and learning would be like in a Web 3 world. Well, we are now living in a Web 3 world with 24/7 connectivity everywhere, everywhen, social media, decentralization of information, digital money, online shopping, multimedia content creation, and now artificial intelligence. The techniques for teaching and learning in this world we called Pedagogy 3.0. Pedagogy studies the methods and principles of teaching. And in this film I use the term pedagogies to describe all the different approaches to teaching, giving feedback and assessment that teachers could use. So how will teachers use AI? The policy position of the Department of Education in England is that teachers, departments and schools and academy trusts have the green light to use the technology. Policymakers in the US and across the world are making very similar proposals. There are over 50 possible uses of AI listed on my blog in part 1, and I will add to the list as I discover new applications. The same policy document from England is also saying that students should be taught to use AI safely and appropriately. Which of these two options would be better? A course on digital literacy with emphasis on ethics and safety, and dire warnings on the consequences of plagiarism, and or developing a digital companion for students to use on their learning journey through school, emphasizing the personalization of learning. Now this quotation is very interesting and is worth looking at in some detail. Almost every field of employment now depends upon technology, from radio to television, computers and the internet. Each new technological advance has changed our world and has changed us too. But there's one notable exception. Education has barely changed. The fundamental model of school education is still a teacher talking to a group of pupils. It has barely changed over the centuries, even since Plato established the earliest academia in the shady olive grove in ancient Athens. Well, those words were said by Michael Gove in 2012, when Michael Gove was Secretary of State for Education in England, and he said the words at the BET Educational Technology Show. Similar comments could be made about the use of educational technology across the world. Technology has considerable power to disrupt education, and this is one reason why its introduction into schools is carefully controlled by both teachers and also by schools. Think, for example, about students' use of mobile phones in the classroom or the use of tablet computers. Mr. Gove interestingly, is also an architect of the knowledge-rich curriculum in England, and this is another reason that the use of educational technology is carefully managed in English classrooms. The knowledge-rich curriculum has spawned a teacher-centred pedagogy where teachers explicitly control every aspect of the teaching and learning process. These are called visible controls because they are visible and evident to students and also to observers of the lesson. Invisible controls are where the teacher appears to grant some independence to students to control certain aspects of their teaching and learning, and they're often associated with inquiry-based learning or problem-based learning. These controls are called invisible because the teacher is still in control of the lesson during student-led activities and can step in and change the lesson as and when appropriate. In traditional teacher-centred pedagogies, the teacher is the sole voice of authority in the classroom, and the uncontrolled use of AI could threaten this authority. The blog considers in detail how teachers can control the use of AI in their lessons. Users of AI, generative AI as it's called, are discovering that AI works best when the selection and choice of lesson content, the use of appropriate subject language, and the learning outcomes are clearly written into AI prompts. These are also made visible and explicit in teacher-centred pedagogies. So teaching students to write such prompts for themselves will help their understanding and metacognition of the subject. To do that, they need to achieve a certain level of mastery of the subject that they're studying. So the successful use of AI should be codependent with careful classroom teaching. I argue in the blog that the use of AI in the classroom, properly managed and regulated, is entirely consistent with a teacher-centred approach to pedagogy. Students can use AI to check their work and their current understanding, and students can also help to develop their understanding further. Traditional and inquiry-based learning are sometimes presented as if they are mortal enemies of each other, polar opposites that cannot coexist, but this is misleading. It is perfectly possible to develop a versatile pedagogy where teacher-led activities coexist alongside student-centred activities that use AI. Students can be allowed to use and explore AI in the care and the supervision of their teachers in a kind of versatile pedagogy. Teachers can help to shape good AI system prompts and help students to evaluate critically the outcomes produced by AI. I designed the graphic to try and illustrate this. The upside down shape is meant to be a teacher's mortarboard, protecting inside the students working independently on mobile devices using AI. And they're doing this within the safety and a framework of teachers being around to help them stay on task and to check the work that they're doing. At the same time as the internet is talking about the promise of AI in education, it's also issuing dire warnings about AI being an existential threat to the fabric of society. And many of these warnings are coming from the people who themselves are developing the technologies. They argue that the foundations of our society could rock if AI were to develop the power to understand ideas and to think for itself. In other words, to acquire what they call general intelligence. AI developers believe that general intelligence will inevitably emerge when AI has been trained on enough material. And there are some who are hinting that we may already have achieved that state. And this is all the more reason why teachers should engage with and use AI creatively now, so they can adapt to the future. If the developers are correct and AI is an existential threat, then it has the potential to blow away all the existing power structures within education. It's even more important at this stage of relative naivety that we learn to accommodate AI into our routine classrooms. The digital education that students will need comes from being a participant rather than an observer. And if we don't learn to do this now, we may not get another chance in the future. So let me draw your attention to a group called AI in Education, which is a diverse group of professionals that are looking to see how we can incorporate AI into existing classrooms and existing subjects. Just Google AI in Education and go and have a look at their most interesting website. I seem to be arguing that in carefully managed situations, AI can promote personalised learning. If so, then this will be a significant plus for education. However, I wonder what will be the downsides. Well, we're not sure. So can we learn from the recent past? As part of the HP Catalyst project, I researched 2 schools that issued iPads to their students in years 7 and 8. And at the end of that school year, I surveyed the students in both schools, and both groups responded identically. In about 20% of the students became very enthusiastic, independent learners. They used their devices a lot, perhaps too much. Certainly some students that thought their friends were becoming addicted to the screens. At the other end, about 20% of the students found iPads difficult and confusing, and only ever used their devices when they were told to in lessons. As one girl told me, "I may have an iPad, but I still don't know where the Sahara Desert is. So having an iPad is not in itself a solution to the problem of learning." And as we know from students' use of mobile phones, unpleasant secondary effects such as fear of missing out, isolation, depression can emerge. And so it will be important that we monitor the use of AI in schools for potential secondary effects on socialisation, authenticity and mental well-being. Well, this has been a brief introduction to some of the ideas in the blog Teaching and Learning with AI that can be found on my website at neilingram.co.uk. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation.